I'm delighted to see so many of you have joined us on the webinar this morning. I do hope you're all adjusting to this new environment we find ourselves in. I'd also like to welcome our colleagues from Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber and welcome their members too. For those of you that haven't attended one of our webinars yet, I'd just like to give you a quick update from Sheffield Chamber. Over the last few weeks, the Chamber team and Board of Directors have been holding weekly meetings via video conference to ensure we're up to date with the latest government advice. And we're working closer than ever with the British Chambers of Commerce, our partners, and the wider Chamber network to assist and support our membership and the wider business community as best we can. As part of this support, Sheffield Chamber are aiming to bring you 2 to 3 webinars a week, with the aim of sharing as much information with you all as possible. This will also give you a platform to ask questions to experts from different specialist areas. We understand that in the short term, most businesses are trying to understand and access the different support packages available to you. We appreciate this must be an extremely stressful and anxious time, and therefore we'll do our utmost to alleviate some of that stress by offering as much advice as possible and by signposting you to the relevant people and organisations that can help. Over the medium to long term, as businesses adjust to working from home, the Chamber will look to offer a wider variety of webinars and online training courses to help further support and develop your businesses in this challenging new environment. But firstly, to today's webinar. Following the coronavirus outbreak, the government announced a number of support packages for businesses. One of the key support packages announced was the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, and that's where we're focusing our attention today. I'm delighted to say we're joined by our keynote speaker and an expert in this field, Mark Wilcockson, Senior Manager at the British Business Bank. Mark joined the British Business Bank in 2016 as a Relationship Manager for the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund. Mark previously worked for Lloyds Banking Group for more than 30 years and NHS England. Mark, you're very welcome. So the format of today's webinar is simple. I'll shortly introduce Mark, who will provide an update on the Business Interruption Loan Scheme, and then we'll open for questions. I'd like this webinar to be as engaging as possible, so as to ensure participants take as much information away as they can. Please submit any questions you have via the chat box, and I'll aim to get to as many as possible. If you're not comfortable posting a public message, you can send private messages directly to myself or Mark. We will aim to finish on time, so if there are any outstanding questions, I'll happily share my contact details and Mark's contact details following the webinar. So without further ado, I'd like to start by introducing Mark Wilcockson from the British Business Bank, who's going to give an introduction to the British Business Bank just to contextualise their involvement in the scheme before going on to give an overview of the loan scheme and then opening for questions. Thanks, Mark.
Sam, thank you very much. I'm getting quite a bit of feedback. Is it okay at your end?
Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay, so I'm delighted to join everybody this morning on behalf of the British Business Bank and the opportunity to talk about the Business Loan Interruption Scheme. I'm going to look at 3 things this morning. Firstly, I'd just like to give some background to the British Business Bank to contextualise what we do and why we're involved. I'll then have a look at the Business Loan Interruption Scheme at a high level, because I think the value for you will come out of the questions that I'm sure people will want to ask. I'll then have a look at a few alternatives to the Business Loan Interruption Scheme. So, to start off with, background to the British Business Bank. What is the British Business Bank? Well, I'm absolutely proud to say that the British Business Bank is headquartered in South Yorkshire, in Sheffield. We have an office at the bottom of West Street, and I work there with around 120, 130 colleagues. The British Business Bank throughout the UK has around 350 colleagues, and the organisation was formed in 2014. Indeed, the British Business Bank was created out of the last financial crisis, 2008-2009, when the government recognised that they needed an economic development bank that could support the SMEs in the UK in times of difficulty. So it's absolutely fitting that we're involved in the current coronavirus pandemic. So formed in 2014, I think Sam said I joined in 2016 to work on the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund. So the organisation is just over 5 years old. And I'm quite proud to say that in those 5 years, the organisation has facilitated over £7 billion of finance to SMEs, which is a significant number. But we've been asked to do more. So the British Business Bank, we act as an wholesale organisation. Our job is to facilitate, to obtain the money to invest in SMEs. And we do that through working with a network of partners. And we have over 120, 130 partners who support the SMEs in the UK. So that's a little bit of background on the British Business Bank. So the Coronavirus Business Interruption Loan Scheme, it was originally announced in the budget, and doesn't that seem quite a long time ago now? I was on a beach somewhere enjoying a holiday and was surprised at the announcements in the budget. But there was further announcements on the 17th of March by the Chancellor that made amendments to the scheme, and it initially allocated £330 billion to the scheme and increased the maximum amounts that an SME could obtain up to £5 million. The scheme keeps evolving. It's evolved a number of times, and I'm sure you've seen the press about guarantees, and the main 4 banks no longer requiring guarantees below £250,000, and it will continue to evolve. So my advice would be keep an eye on the British Business Bank's website, and all updates will be posted on there as soon as they happen. So, announced by the Chancellor on the 17th of March, the British Business Bank launched the scheme on the 23rd of March. That's less than 2 weeks ago, although it does seem a long time. And I can tell you already that funds reached SMEs in that first week. So if I look at the scheme in more detail, how does it work? Well, we work through a panel of accredited lenders. So currently we have around 40 accredited lenders who are able to access the scheme. These accredited lenders include high street banks, some of the challenger banks, asset-based lenders, and some of the smaller local specialist lenders. The lenders can provide up to £5 million per SME. Now that can be in the form of term loans, overdrafts, invoice finance, or asset finance. Not all of our lenders provide all of those, so there is options there in the market. The loan guarantee scheme works by the British Business Bank or the government providing a guarantee of up to 80% to those lenders. So through that, encouraging them to lend more. The borrower does, however, retain full liability for the debt in the first instance. And as I've already called out, the big 4 banks, plus Santander, having looked on their website, have agreed that they will not take personal guarantees for facilities below £250,000. So if I look at some of the key features. So I've already said finance is available up to £5 million. And for term facilities, that can be up to a term of 6 years. For overdrafts and asset and invoice finance facilities, that term is a maximum term of 3 years. The government will pay the interest and costs on those facilities for the first 12 months. So to the SME, there is no cost. There is no guarantee fee to be paid by the SME, so all the benefit goes to the SME. In terms of security below £250,000 is not required by the big banks. So that's Lloyds, HSBC, RBS, Barclays, and as I've also said, Santander. Check with each lender, but check with each of the other lenders to see their particular requirements. So if you're an SME, how do you access the money? First of all, I would highly recommend you go to your main bank. They know your business, they understand your business, and they should always be your first point of contact. The lender can make an assessment of your business, have a look at your business plan and any forecasts, and the lender has to check that the business was viable prior to the coronavirus crisis. They have to check, we ask them to check that the business, as a result of coming out the support, will continue to be viable post the crisis. The lender will make a decision, and if they are happy with the creditworthiness, they will then complete the documentation, which if the lender turns down your own bank, please look at the other providers on the website. Some of our local providers are very, very active in this market, actively advertising that they're very much open for business, and I would encourage you to look at some of these local lenders. So who can apply in terms of businesses? Well, virtually most businesses in the UK that meet an SME definition. So the business has to be based in the UK. It has to have an annual turnover of below £45 million. And the borrowing criteria is that the business would be viable if it were not for the epidemic, and if the support allows you to trade, that you will be viable once the pandemic is over. On our website, there is a quick eligibility checklist that has 5 questions on there to make sure that you can apply it. The questions are really easy. So the 5 questions: your application for the funding must be for business purposes. You must be a UK-based SME with an annual turnover up to £45 million, and the business must generate more than 50% of its turnover from trading. And the maximum amount that you want to borrow should be less than £5 million for a term of up to 6 years. So that's a quick high level of the scheme. I'm happy to take questions. I did say I'd cover some of the other alternatives to the coronavirus business interruption scheme for you to think about. If you're a new business or a business trading less than 2 years, the British Business Bank also has a subsidiary called Startup Loans. Please have a look at Startup Loans. Again, the Startup Loans programme is active and is still supporting startup businesses in the UK. And as Sam said at the beginning, I joined the bank to become the relationship manager for the Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund. The Northern Powerhouse Investment Fund is very much open for business. Our local providers, Mercia, will provide our loan from £100,000 to £750,000. I've done a number of deals in the last few days that you may have seen the publicity on. Our microfinance loan providers, who provide loans between £25,000 and £100,000, also happen to be CBILS accredited. So if you're looking for facilities up to £100,000, Finance for Enterprise based in Doncaster or Business Enterprise Fund based in Bradford are both accredited lenders under CBILS. Indeed, Business Enterprise Fund in the first 4 days last week agreed 4 loans under the CBILS scheme, which I think is absolutely fantastic. So you've got 2 alternatives there that you can go to. So I'm happy to take questions. Sam, do you want to?
Yeah, Mark, we'll start from the top. So in the chat box, there's the first question is from Patrick Abel, and it's perhaps best you just, given that I read with it being so quite a long-winded question, so I'm not going to relay it back to you. If you wouldn't mind just glancing your eyes at that and then coming back to Patrick, please.
Okay, so shareholders putting their personal assets at risk. Patrick, thanks for the question. I think the scheme is evolving in terms of personal guarantees. Originally, we saw a lot of the major banks taking guarantees on all levels of facilities. The scheme is quite clear that facilities below £250,000 could be provided unsecured, and we've seen the main providers change their stance on that, which is a step forward. I think you're aware from our conversations that any feedback that you give, I do feed into the British Business Bank central team, and your comments regarding priorities of the guarantee and the amount of it have already been fed back. As I said earlier, the scheme continues to evolve, and the more that we can feed back into government, the more they get the opportunity to look how it operates.
Mark, I've had a question. Are funding circle recognised by the British Business Bank?
Yeah, absolutely. Funding Circle are one of our delivery partners. We work very closely with Funding Circle, and we support Funding Circle through one of our programs. They are a major peer-to-peer lender in the UK, and British Business Bank absolutely does recognise Funding Circle and works with them closely, and are continuing to work with them.
John Hassel says that his clients are reporting that lenders are focusing on alternative mechanisms and only considering CBILS as a last resort.
John, thanks for that question. The guidance under the scheme is that lenders should look to provide support commercially before utilising the government guarantee scheme. There are many businesses out there that have security, that have a solid borrowing proposition, and the lenders will absolutely say only use the guarantee scheme as a last resort. A solid business that has security and can obtain finance does currently fall outside the scheme. This scheme is for businesses that need immediate support, that need support through the crisis, help getting through the crisis, and that will come out the other end stronger as a result. So it is proving a little bit of a challenge at the moment that borrowers are seeking to access the scheme for the benefits. That is causing unprecedented demand, but absolutely, as we currently sit today, if there is a commercial option, we are asking the banks to take that commercial option.
Mark, Brett Jackson is asking whether they can apply through a different lender rather than their own bank, to various other reasons.
Yeah, Brett, absolutely. There are 40 lenders listed on our website. If you go to the British Business Bank, on there, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Scheme, you will see the logos and links to all of those 40 providers. I would suggest you go to your bank first because they do know you, but absolutely look at any of the other lenders, particularly the local lenders around Sheffield, who are clearly open for business.
Quite a technical question, Mark, from John, as an employee of a lender. Technical question around calculating interest charges for the first 12 months. Can you see that one?
No.
It says, how is the UK government calculating interest charges for the first 12 months?
For the business, you don't have to worry about the interest charges. The lenders are submitting to British Business Bank what their normal lending rates are. We are sense checking that. We have agreement from a number of the banks that, with the benefit of the guarantee, they will be charging below their standard lending rates, and the agreement, the British Business Bank and the government will cover off all the interest for borrowers. Don't need to worry about interest rate for the first 12 months.
A question from Nigel Short. With so much uncertainty on when the government funding will actually arrive, and is needing a small loan to cover rent, staff wages, is there any clarity on when the 10k grant to small businesses will be paid by the local council?
Nigel, that's kind of outside the remit of the British Business Bank. That's a separate programme to ourselves. What I would say is the CBILS loan scheme is a great way of covering short-term cash flow needs, especially if you're following your staff and you're waiting that cash to come in. CBILS is a great way of covering these short-term needs. The CBILS loan can be as short as 3 months. So covering things like rent, other government payments, CBILS is a great way to do that. Just from personal experience, Barnsley Council are already issuing those small business grants, and a business I'm involved in received theirs yesterday. So So local councils are working, but it's nothing within the control of British Business Bank.
Yeah, and Nigel, I do believe that Sheffield City Council are already approving the grants as well, because I've seen where you apply from on the website. So I'll see what I can find with regards to Rotherham Council, and I'll share that link in the follow-up email. And I think that your second question was answered in terms of minimum loan requirement. Should you consider? You said it was a minimum loan term of 3 months.
The minimum term's 3 months. During that point, obviously, you're not paying any interest. The minimum loan amount is from £1,000. Some lenders have different criteria on the minimum amount, but again, there are 40 lenders on our website. Approach your own bank first would be my advice.
I had a question from another participant who said that they spoke to NatWest and they needed to establish need. What this seemed to mean was that we were nearly bust right now, and because we aren't, we should consider applying in a few months' time. Surely companies can forward plan better if they know what they can get.
It's down to NatWest policies, but it does seem strange. I would advise all businesses to plan well ahead. I think there was such a raft of inquiries in the first week of the scheme that all the lenders struggled with the volumes. So I would recommend you have a further conversation with them as they get used to the volumes and the initial volumes start to decline a little bit. But yeah, I guess they were prioritising those that needed the money straight away. But please just go back, keep talking to them, and keep asking them for the finance. Forward planning is the only way.
And you said that money's already going out the door, Mark. What is initial feedback from businesses, from people who've approved, and what is your approval rate at the minute?
The way the scheme operates, Sam, makes it really hard for us to see the approval rates. The process is for the business loan interruption scheme is we launched the scheme last Monday. The lenders then market or launch the scheme to their front lines effectively. They accept applications in from businesses and their clients. They then go through their credit approval process, and we only see usage of the scheme once they're through that credit approval process and they're starting to document the loan. So it's very early days to see what volumes are going through. As I did say earlier, Sam, Business Enterprise Fund, which is an organisation I know quite well, they did 4 CBILS loans in the first 4 days last week. So literally, very, very quickly. And I saw the first of those loans going out the door on Monday. So, anecdotal evidence to me is that the money is starting to flow, and British Business Bank and the UK government is monitoring usage by the day.
Thanks, Mark. Matthew Woodhead asks, what timescales are banks working to in terms of? He's been talking to Barclays. They said they were working on a 2 to 3 month lockdown, followed by 2 to 3 months more of social distancing, and then saying that he's had clients turn down on cash flow for not assuming long enough under these restrictions.
Yeah, Matthew, very, very difficult for me to comment, to be honest. Each lender's taken a slightly different view. I have no insight as to how long the measures are going to be in place. If that's the feedback given by Barclays, I should be putting the submission in based on that feedback.
And the question is that if a business can get finance through normal means, then is that the route they will be sent down? What is the different criteria for CBILS to be accessed?
CBILS is there to provide security to the lender and encourage them to lend in a situation that they would not. So if a business has available security, we would expect that security to be used to secure the borrowing. If a business has no available security and the bank did not want to lend due to the lack of security, CBILS is there to provide the security to the bank and for them to encourage them to lend. It's as simple as that.
And with this, have lending rules been relaxed at all?
Again, it's difficult for me to comment because of the each lender has its own criteria. I would say that the change in the need for personal guarantees below £250,000 is a clear signal that the banks have changed some of their lending policies.
A question from Andy, who is a freelance L&D associate delivering training and coaching. Is saying his work has dropped off a cliff. Can he borrow money to keep himself and his family going? He doesn't get help under the self-employment help from government. I think he's struggling.
And the CBILS scheme is available to SMEs and businesses. If you were trading as a sole trader through a business account, you would be able to apply via one of our lenders for support via the scheme. The condition is you have to have been operating a business account.
Okay. Thank you. James has asked, James was told that he needed to use up business reserves. Is that correct, using up business reserves before being able to access CBILS loan?
No, not at all. The criteria are quite simple. If you have a viable business that needs funding and it will remain viable coming out of the crisis, there is no need to erode your reserves. In fact, James dropped me a line. I'd be interested in learning more about that one. And
if that's the feedback that people get from their own banks, would you suggest that they approach different lenders?
Yeah, absolutely. As I've already said, there's 40 lenders on there on our website at the moment. British Business Bank is currently undergoing accreditation of new lenders. So over the next few weeks, I think those 40 lenders will increase and probably increase significantly. So if your own lender is not happy to support you, please look at one of those other lenders. Please keep coming back to the website and seeing as we put new lenders and we accredit new lenders onto that scheme.
Peter has a really good question. He says it's obviously difficult to forecast for the future at this minute in time and plan for what cash may be needed and when. In such case, they may need to keep going back for more funds, additional funds. Is it possible to keep making further applications as things move forward?
Really good question, Peter. And absolutely, you can apply for a number of CBILS loans. You can even apply to different lenders. So if your main bank wants to support you on the first one and you want a specialist lender, an asset finance lender or an invoice discount lender to support you on the second, you can apply to multiple lenders and you can apply for multiple loans. The caveat being that you cannot obtain more than the £5 million cap on the facility. So yeah, it's absolutely challenging to forecast. Do your best to forecast what you want now, but there is nothing to stop you going back at a later date and benefiting from the scheme.
Nikki asks, the interest charges are paid by the government, but does the business need to pay this out first and then reclaim, much like the furlough scheme?
No, Nikki, the interest and any of the costs associated with that borrowing are dealt with between the British Business Bank and the lender. The borrower absolutely does not see those costs. The borrower obviously has to repay the capital on a term loan, but there are options with most lenders to take a capital repayment holiday in the early days. So no, you don't have to reclaim it. That is something that the British Business Bank will sort with the lenders direct.
And we have a comment from Sophia and Martha. Rishi and Boris sold this as an arm around business. However, like Brexit, it's far more complicated and is more about the optics for government. Is that an unfair conclusion from your perspective, Mark?
Sophia and Martha, you'd expect me to say yes. That is an unfair conclusion. I think in terms of schemes, this scheme was launched at an unprecedented rate into the market. It is already providing funding to businesses across the UK. It has a £330 billion initial commitment. and everybody at British Business Bank is absolutely doing their best to make sure that SMEs are aware of it, businesses are aware of it, and can get access to it. The scheme, as I said earlier, will continues to evolve. When issues are identified, these are flagged up, and I would not be surprised to keep seeing it evolve over the coming months.
We have a question from Jamie, who's asking what's been done to speed up the process for high street banks. Feedback that he's getting from clients is that the banks are snowed under and taking a while. Contact clients, review applications, etc. Can you give any idea on timescales from application to approval?
Unfortunately not. It's down to each of the lenders. I have seen some really positive things coming out from the main lenders, and feedback I am getting, such as increase in local levels of authorities to sign off loans, some reduced processes in the paperwork. I don't have a view on individual banks, I can't give that, but I do know they have received unprecedented levels of inquiries, and they are gearing up as much as they can to support those inquiries.
Another question from Patrick. ABLs form the bulk of non-bank lenders. Clearly, if business drops off, CID not helpful in the short term. ABLs therefore need to be able to offer term loans disproportionate to CID drawdown. Can British Business Bank try to get this approved so that ABLs can be a more effective lender under the scheme?
Patrick, another great question. It's already been flagged. We will continue to flag. We have invited lenders, or approved lenders, to look at other products and apply to be allowed to offer other products on the scheme. But yeah, as always, a great idea, and we will continue to flag it.
Another question, one of the participants doesn't pay rates, and they rent an office within another company's premises, so don't qualify in the 10k grant. Is CBILS the only road left?
Again, it's really outside my sphere of expertise, but there is a whole raft of support around VAT payments that the government has provided, and I'm sure the Chamber can help provide information on the other routes and support that's available.
Down to the last question from Peter Farnell, Mark. Purchased a business in January, paying the previous owner on a quarterly basis over 3 years. Income from clients has come to a standstill with no idea when business will resume. Will a business such as mine be eligible for CBILS, given the liability I already have in terms of paying for a business over a 3-year period?
The principle of CBILS is if the business is viable and is suffering an interruption due to the coronavirus epidemic, and the support of CBILS will ensure that in the medium term the business continues to be viable, the businesses are able to apply to CBILS for support.
And Anne has asked, if the banks are snowed under, is it likely they will look at new lending? And the question will be, why not your own bank? The secondary lenders tend to have higher interest rates and security asks.
Yeah, and the lenders are snowed under. I would still say approach them and start talking to them. If they are that snowed under and you have an immediate need, obviously, yeah, do speak to the, as you term them, secondary lenders. Yes, they do have higher interest rates, but bear in mind that the interest and charges are covered by the government for the first 12 months. So you as a business may go to one of the challenger lenders. They may have slightly higher rates, but the government's going to cover that for you, so you don't have to worry about it for the first 12 months.
Okay, that seems to have brought questions to a close. We did plan for another 5 minutes of Mark's time, so if anybody does have any burning questions, please upload them now. Otherwise, we will look to bring this to a close. Just while we wait to see if any final questions come in, Mark, just one final bit of advice you could give to businesses that are worried, struggling at this minute in time?
Absolutely, Sam. And I think CBILS is part of a package that businesses should look to. They should take every opportunity to use every source of finance available to them. They should talk to the local authorities about grants. They should look at the job protection scheme. They should look at all the schemes available out there. The CBILS is there if the business needs support. Please, in your first instance, talk to your main bank, because they have that track record with you. If you can't get support from your main bank or they're too busy, look at some of the other lenders on our website. There's some specialists out there. They are all ready to lend. But my final bit of advice would be keep looking at the British Business Bank website. We will continually update that. There is a lot of frequently asked questions on there. So if you've got questions about the scheme, and we will update the website as we bring new lenders on board. So keep looking at the website. I'm sure you'll see the scheme evolve, and I'm sure it will be a success in the short term.
Thanks, Mark. Last couple of questions come in then. Sorry, Ryan said he missed the answer. Does the business need to pay the interest charges out and then reclaim?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. The business doesn't pay any interest charges or costs. That is settled directly between the banks and British Business Bank.
Brilliant. Final question. My clients are finding that their usual contact at the bank has changed. They've got a new relationship manager. They can't get through their new relationship manager, but no one at the bank. CBILS applications have also been submitted, no response. Do you have any advice on next steps?
Yeah, again, difficult because it's down to the banks themselves. The advice we are giving out that the banks are absolutely swamped with enquiries. The best way of contacting them is via email. If you look on the individual bank website, they will have messages up saying please contact us by email, and just keep trying.
Super. So unfortunately we've got to bring it to a close now. Conscious that you're all busy, and Mark's obviously giving up his time voluntarily, so I'd just like to sincerely thank Mark from the British Business Bank for his time this morning. Thank you all for joining us on the webinar. I will circulate some links to some of the resources that Mark's mentioned. I'll send a follow-up email, and I'll also include Mark's and myself's contact details for any outstanding questions. As mentioned at the beginning, a recording of the webinar will also be viewable on the Chamber's YouTube channel this afternoon. And a reminder of some further Chamber webinars next week. On Tuesday, we have our Strategy for Survival webinar. And on Wednesday, we are focusing on the Self-Employment Income Support Scheme. Please book early to avoid disappointment. So thanks for joining us. Mark, thanks for your time. And until next time, stay safe, everyone, and have a great day.